Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game with over 100 cards, and 99% of those cards are bad. However, these bad cards still make it into players' Edison format decks every single day. Join me as I dive deep into the abyss of bad card design and put these unloved pieces of cardboard to the ultimate test. 3 duels against random strangers on the internet. At the end of each episode, we'll reveal each card's place on the cursed tech tier list, ranking them from almost competitive to downright unplayable trash. Will we stumble upon a broken combo, invent a new deck, or will we just go insane trying to win a duel using Frog the Jam? You will just have to wait and find out. This is Cursed Tech. Hello and welcome to the second episode of Cursed Tech. In this episode, we're looking at a card that is known to OTK, a card that was a playground staple back in the day, and a card that I hold very near and dear to my own heart, Grenmaju Deiza. Grenmaju is a level 3 fire effect monster with question mark attack and question mark defense. Its effect reads, the attack and defense of this card become the number of your cards removed from play times 400 points. This is an old card. This is a dang old card. With Grenmaju's very simple effect, it has been a playground staple for generations. It's sort of a build your own blue eyes. You could just try to banish all the cards in your deck and then normal summon this ginormous, powerful, weird looking card. Unlike Dekoichi, which we talked about in the last episode, which was competitively viable on release, Grenmaju has had the opposite lifespan. You see, it was dog water bad when it came out, and it wasn't until 2019 and 2020 that it ever saw any success in competitive decks. Grenmaju's newfound success was primarily due to cards like Pot of Desires that basically read Grenmaju is playable now. Banishing 10 cards off the top of your deck and then drawing 2 cards is something that a Grenmaju deck needs. It needs the ability to banish mass cards all at the same time in order to make it even worth it to play. In order to make Grenmaju work in Edison format, we are going to need to jump through some major hoops. And those hoops involve a broken toad and an unsearchable trap card. Here is the plan. First, you need Substitute, a card so flawed in card design that it led to a tier 1 FTK in the format that came just after Edison. It reads, you contribute 1 monster to special summon 1 frog monster from the deck. If you can get Substitute on the field with 1 other monster, you can dump every single frog in your deck to the graveyard for free. The next part of our plan involves a trap called Skull Layer. It reads, remove from play any number of monster cards in your graveyard to destroy 1 face-up monster on the field whose level is equal to the number of cards you remove from play. This means that after you dump every single frog monster from your deck to the graveyard, you have an unbelievable trap card that can quick effect speed pop any monster your opponent tries to play. And finally, after banishing a ton of frogs with Skull Layer, you can normal summon a ginormous Grenmaju and attack your opponent. I know. A multiple turn 4 or 5 card setup with no protection that's end result is a Grenmaju that is not even large enough to kill your opponent in 1 attack. But come on, what did you expect? This is cursed tech. The tech is cursed for a reason. That's what we do on this channel. We bring you the cursed tech. Let's check out the deck. Let's look at this horrendous deck list. Come on. Behold my Grenmaju deck list. Like I said in the intro, we are trying to get Substitute on the board with 1 other monster, put every frog in our deck to the graveyard, and then banish all of those frogs with Skull Layer, and then normal summon Grenmaju. We've got 2 Battle Fader because it combos well with Substitute and with Cyber Valley. You have to run a bunch of frogs because you need to get enough monsters in the grave to banish, so we are playing the 3 flip-flop frog, the Unifrog and the Swap Frog and the Treeborn. We're also playing Gore's Trag because these work as great defensive options, and they work well because you contribute them to summon more frogs out of your deck with the Substitute. Grenmaju is our boss monster. He's an incredible card that does not much on its own, but hey, what can I say? He's Grenmaju. You know, he's a good guy. We're playing Brain Control. We're also playing 2 creature swaps because we're playing bad cards and our opponent might be playing good cards. And we're playing 2 enemy controllers. We can steal our opponent's monsters, or the lesser known use of enemy controller is we can switch our opponent's monster to attack position
and then attack into it with Grenmaju. We're also playing Giant Trunade and Heavy Storm to clear the way, as well as our MST, and we're on the triple Moray of Greed because we need to see our combo pieces, and if we do not, we are going to brick and we are going to lose. We're also playing 1-for-1 because it can get the Substitoad out of the deck, and the Magical Cylinder for the cheese factor, and our final trap card is the Skull Layer. None of these cards matter. In this deck, you don't need these cards. Let's get into the duels. In this first duel, we are up against Light Sworns, and this duel does a good job of showing what this deck does most of the time. We bricked. In this next duel, we are up against Synchro Cat. You can see in our opening hand, we have the Grenmaju, we have Gores, Swap Frog, and Skull Layer. All we're missing now is Substitoad and a way to get another monster on the field. Fortunately, we have Moray of Greed. This lets us return 2 water monsters into the deck and then draw 3 cards. We do not find a way to Substitoad plus monster, but we can still send a Treeborn Frog to the graveyard, bounce this Swap Frog back to our hand, and then end our turn. Our opponent is going to summon an Airbellum. This card, when it attacks directly, discards a random card from my hand, but fortunately, I can activate the effect of Gores first. We are able to summon the Gores. They choose the Grenmaju to Iza, which is going to reveal our strategy, but that's okay for now. Our opponent is then going to set 2 cards and then pass their turn back to us. Now on our turn, we draw the Substitoad, which is exactly what we need. We are able to summon Treeborn Frog in the standby phase. Then we are able to activate Giant Trunade in the main phase to clear the way of any back row our opponent might have. And now we can do some Substitoad shenanigans. What we can do is we can tribute the Treeborn Frog to summon out any frog from our deck. This summons out a Swap Frog, and then when Swap Frog summon, we can send a Substitoad from our deck to the graveyard. Then Substitoad can tribute the Swap Frog to summon out yet another Swap Frog, and that Swap Frog can send another Substitoad from our deck to the graveyard. Now you're getting the idea. We can just tribute anything we want to summon any frogs from our deck. We summon out a Unifrog. We decide to summon this Swap Frog from the hand in order to get more monsters onto the field. This Swap Frog is going to send a Treeborn Frog, and then we're going to tribute that Swap Frog to just dump a bunch of frogs from our deck to the graveyard. And now we decide that we can probably get in for some damage just before we keep going with our Swap Frog Substitoad shenanigans. We attack this Airbellum, then we attack with this token, and then we just set up an unbreakable frog board. It's not completely unbreakable, but people that know about Frog FTK know about the terror that is the full frog combo. We have 2 dupe frogs, and this is known in Yu-Gi-Oh! As the dupe lock. Dupe frog says monsters your opponent controls cannot target monsters for attacks except this one. And that means if you have 2 dupe frogs on the field, your opponent, they're just they're not attacking anything. They're not doing anything. We also have Unifrog, which it can attack directly, and if it does, it can pop any spell or trap your opponent controls. And lastly, we have the Flip-Flop Frog. When it's flipped face up, can return monsters your opponent controls to the hand equal to the number of frog monsters you control, which in this instance is 4. So what this means is anything our opponent sets, we can kill. Any monster they summon, we can flip, and they cannot attack. And just to make matters even better for us, we are able to set this Skull Layer. I believe Skull Layer is a very interesting card in the frog deck because you're able to dump all the monsters from your deck to the graveyard so quickly. With the deck our opponent's playing, we can pop multiple cards and interrupt our opponent multiple times with one continuous trap card that just stays on the field, which is very unique in Edison format and I think could be explored further. Our opponent's going to look at this terrifying board, set 1 monster, set 1 back row, and then pass the turn back to us. We decide to not play into Torrential. We are going to attack with Unifrog so we can pop this bottomless trap hole. Now in main phase 2, we can flip this Flip-Flop Frog, return that monster back to the hand. Our opponent sees what's happening, they see the writing on the walls, and they admit defeat. This next duel, we are up against Blackwings. Our opening hand looks pretty great. We have Skull Layer, Grenmaju, Moray of Greed, and all we need now is access to Substitoad plus monster. So we'll activate this Moray of Greed, shuffling back the Dupe Frog and the Flip-Flop Frog from our hand, and draw 3 cards. Those 3 cards are unfortunately not a way to Substitoad plus monster, but it might be on the next turn. So we normal summon the Cyber Valley and pass the turn. Our opponent normal summons the Dark Grepher, attacks our Cyber Valley. We can activate the effect of Cyber Valley to banish it and then draw 1 card. Our opponent sets 1 back row and then passes the turn back to us. We draw a Swap Frog per turn, which is very good for us because we can get to Substitoad plus monster. We special summon the Swap Frog, sending a Treeborn Frog, normal summon the Substitoad, and priority send our Swap Frog to the graveyard. So we send all the frogs in our deck to the graveyard, and then we end on the Dupe block. We decide to set this Skull Layer, but unfortunately for us, our opponent activates MST in the end phase, so we're going to need to find a new way to banish monsters in order to get this Grenmaju live. Our opponent cannot attack, so they decide to normal summon a Kalute, set 1 back row, and then they pass the turn back to us. We summon Treeborn Frog in the standby phase and activate Creature Swap, giving our opponent our Treeborn Frog in attack position, and they decide to give us their Dark Grepher. We go to the battle phase, attack the Kalute, but they obviously have Icarus attack, so they are going to use that to pop both of our Dupe Frogs, but that's no big deal. We can use those Dupe Frogs to add 2 frogs from from our graveyard to our hand. We're going to add a Swap Frog and a Flip-Flop Frog. Our opponent draws for turn. They are just going to switch this Treeborn Frog to defense position and then pass the turn back to us. We draw Heavy Storm, which could be good later. We summon the Treeborn Frog, normal summon the Swap Frog, and then we attack our opponent directly with Dark Breath. But unfortunately for us, our opponent does have Gores, so they'll summon the Gores and the 1700 attack token. Turn the Swap Frog back to our hand and then pass our turn to our opponent. Our opponent draws for turn. They decide to switch this Gores to attack position and get in some damage. They attack over Dark Breath, and then they decide to attack our Treeborn Frog, and then they pass the turn back to us. We summon Treeborn Frog in the standby phase, and then we are able to normal summon Cyber Valley, activate Cyber Valley's effect to banish both itself and Treeborn Frog to draw 2 cards from our deck. Fortunately for us, we draw into a Skull Layer, which is incredible in this instance because we have so many monsters in the graveyard. This Skull Layer will be able to pop the Gores whenever we want it to. So we pass back to our opponent, and in the draw phase, we can banish 7 monsters from the graveyard to destroy the Gores. Things are looking very good based on the 2 Grenmajus that I have in my hand. Opponent decides to activate Upstart Goblin. Our opponent declares an attack with the token, and we are able to summon the Battle Fader from the hand. And we draw a Brain Control, which is really good. And this is the turn to end all turns. If you look at our graveyard, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 monsters in the graveyard. And unfortunately for us, this token is a level 7. We need to find a way to banish 7 monsters to pop this token in order to get our Grenmaju to a lethal attack. What we're able to do is we can special summon Swap Frog from the hand, pitching a water monster, which is the Flip-Flop Frog. And most people might not know, but Swap Frog actually can do something interesting. Not only can it send a water monster from your deck to the graveyard, but it can also send it from face up field. So we decide to make Swap Frog send itself to the graveyard, giving us 7 monsters in the graveyard to banish with the Skull Layer, destroy their token, normal summon a Grenmaju that has 6,800 attack, and then attack our opponent directly for game. Finally!
And now it is time for the moment you have all been waiting for, Grenmaju's place on the Cursed Tech tier list. First of all, this card's bad. This card, oh my, it's a really bad card. I don't even want to tell you guys how many duels it took me to get the duel that I used in this video. We're talking double digits. This card is, it's really bad. Do not play this deck. It's really bad. The main problem with this deck is the fact that you are trying to do this broken, unfun combo where you dump your entire deck to the graveyard, you try to cheese your opponent, they have to sit there and watch you do it, and then after all that, you normal summon the Grenmaju and it doesn't even win you the game. It's just a high attack monster that can't even kill your opponent in 1 attack. It's just, I really wish it was good. I wish it was good. In fact, it was only after I made this video that I realized a much better version of this deck just plays this card called Chaos Necromancer, which is literally just Grenmaju with 1 less step. You don't need to banish all the cards. And if you use Substitute to dump all your frogs, that guy is going to be basically the same attack. It's just, and the sad part is, even that deck wouldn't be very good. Here's the deck list, here's the potential deck list, and it still wouldn't be that good. So what does that make Grenmaju? And that is why we're going to have to place Grenmaju in the unplayable trash category of the tier list. I know, to all the Grenmaju fans, myself being one of them, I wished so desperately for this card to be good. But after extensive testing and hours of my life, it just doesn't work. It's not good, too much setup for not enough payoff. And I mean, in a format where OTK decks like Fish are subpar, Grenmaju is a deck that does everything worse with less payoff. And that concludes this episode of Cursed Tech. In a future episode though, I think I am going to return to this Substitute dump. There's something there that is unholy and sort of cursed. I mean, that's what the series is, cursed. There's something about that combo that we can probably break in a future episode. And hopefully it doesn't involve these 2 cards right here and leads to some FTK shenanigans. Hopefully not for me and for the Edison format community, but you'll just have to wait and see in a future episode. See you next time.
Grenmaju, finally. Thank God.